January 5, 1931. Berlin is frozen hard. The kind of cold that does not merely sit on the skin, it penetrates into mood. Outside, the city is a pressure cooker in a snow globe, unemployed men stamping their feet to stay warm. Newspapers shouting contradictions, street corners where politics is not debated but fought. Germany is a nation with bruises still fresh from the last war, and with hunger already rehearsing the next one. Yet inside Hermann Göring's residence, the air is warm, thick, almost theatrical. The dining room glows. Crystal catches candlelight. Silverware lands on plates with the soft confidence of people who believe the future belongs to them. A dinner is taking place, and in hindsight it is the kind of dinner that makes historians uncomfortable, because it is too intimate for what it will unleash. At this table sit two men who look like they belong to different species. On one side is Adolf Hitler, still not yet the all-powerful dictator the world will later fear, but already a living combustion engine, the agitator, the voice that can turn humiliation into a choir, the man of crowds and marching boots, brown shirts, and street violence, charisma sharpened into threat. He is fire. Across from him sits a man who seems carved from the opposite element, Hjalmar Schacht. Stiff collar, controlled posture, eyes that have spent a lifetime turning human emotion into numbers. He is ice, and more than that, he is the kind of ice that understands it can hold up an entire structure until the moment it chooses to crack. This is their first personal reckoning. After this dinner, history pivots. Schacht will become one of Hitler's most valuable allies. But he will never be just another Nazi functionary. He is not a thug who can be barked at. He is not a sycophant who nods while the leader rants. He is the only man in the inner orbit of the Third Reich who can look Hitler in the eye, raise his voice and tell him he is wrong and live to tell the tale. He can criticize Nazi economic ignorance in public. He can mock party amateurs. He can even insult men who will later command prisons and terror, and somehow the system tolerates him longer than it tolerates most. There is a reason, and it is not kindness. Hitler knows a truth that every dictator eventually learns, and learns the hard way. Crowds are not the same thing as an economy. You can command soldiers, you can inspire mobs, you can terrify opponents into silence, but you cannot order the balance sheet to balance. You cannot legislate prosperity into existence, you cannot bully arithmetic. Hitler can charm the masses. He can weaponize anger. He can promise work and pride. But he cannot make the numbers add up. Only Schacht can do that. In that sense, Schacht is not merely an advisor. He is the engineer that makes the monster mobile. He is the translator who turns political mania into funded machinery. And eventually he will pull off a financial deception so audacious it feels like a heist performed in full view of the world, using the world's own habits, its own appetites, and its own blindness. To understand how a banker becomes the devil's accountant, you have to understand the kind of man Schacht is before he ever touches Hitler's orbit. Because Schacht is not born a Nazi, he is born something more common, and in many ways more dangerous, a brilliant technocrat with a wounded ego, convinced that history should run through his hands. Schacht rises fast. He is educated, ambitious, socially agile. He does not merely want wealth. Plenty of mediocre men acquire wealth by accident and inheritance. Schacht wants status of a specific kind. He wants to be recognized as the smartest man in the room, the man who moves levers that other people do not even know exist. He collects relationships the way collectors hoard rare objects: politicians, industrialists, foreign bankers, diplomats. He builds a web, not only for friendship, but for control. It is a subtle addiction, the pleasure of watching powerful people listen when you speak, the quiet intoxication of feeling that outcomes bend toward your will. And then comes the moment that freezes into his inner life like a shard of glass. The moment that turns ambition into a long hunger for revenge. The year is 1919, the Great War has ended, and Germany is not merely defeated, it is humiliated. The Treaty of Versailles is being hammered out, and it does not feel like a negotiation, it feels like a public sentencing. The victors are not only redrawing borders, they are rewriting dignity. A German delegation of bankers and businessmen is sent to the Netherlands to negotiate with allied committees over reparations and payments in kind, which is a polite phrase for stripping a nation of its physical wealth. Coal, ships, machinery, anything that can be hauled away and converted into security for the winners. Schacht arrives expecting diplomatic courtesy. What he finds is contempt, served cold and deliberately. The Germans are booked into the worst hotel available. The food is slop. Their movement is restricted. They are watched, herded, treated less like delegates and more like criminals on parole. It is not a mistake. It is a message. You are not equals, you are the defeated, and you will feel it. Then comes the negotiation day, an image so simple it becomes unforgettable because of its cruelty. The heavy doors of the conference hall swing open. The German delegation enters with documents in hand, prepared to plead their case. They scan the room, chairs for the French, chairs for the British, chairs for the Americans, and for the Germans, nothing. No chairs, no place to sit. Schacht freezes. He understands immediately that this is not an oversight. It is a statement made in furniture. You stand. A cold rage rises in him. Not the rage of a brawler, but something sharper, something that lives in the chest of proud men when they are publicly reduced. He speaks up, his voice trembling not with fear but with fury. He demands to know why they are being treated like servants. An Allied negotiator barely looks up and delivers the sentence like a slap. Germany lost the war. They will stand. They conduct the negotiation standing. Legs aching, pride burning, resentment settling into bone. Schacht stands there and makes a vow he will never announce out loud, because it is too raw to admit, but it will guide him like a compass. He will never forget this. He will take this humiliation and preserve it, and one day he will return it to the world in a form the world cannot ignore. This is where the story becomes uncomfortable, because it reveals how national trauma turns into personal obsession, and how personal obsession can later masquerade as patriotism. Versailles does not just impose debt. It imposes a story. The story that Germany is beneath others. The story that Germans should feel shame. And for a certain class of wounded, brilliant men, shame is not a lesson. It is a toxin. It does not make them humble. It makes them vengeful. Schacht is one of them. Now fast forward to 1923. If you think you know inflation, forget what you think you know. You know the modern version. Prices rising, groceries getting expensive, politicians arguing about living costs. What happens in Germany in 1923 is not ordinary inflation. It is monetary horror, an economic fever dream. The German mark does not slowly decline, it evaporates. Prices mutate by the hour. People are paid twice a day so they can run to buy food before the money loses value again. Families carry banknotes in baskets. Children play with stacks of bills because they are more common than toys. Savings disappear, not metaphorically, literally, as if someone reached into bank accounts and erased the future. Schacht watches this from the world he knows best: credit, confidence, banking. He sees something fundamental breaking. Money is not just a tool, it is a social agreement. A promise that this paper, this number, this symbol will be accepted tomorrow. When that promise dies, the nation does not merely become poorer, it becomes unstable. You cannot plan. You cannot invest. You cannot build. You cannot even form a coherent relationship with time. Your life becomes a frantic present tense. Enter Gustav Stresemann, newly tasked with saving a country that feels like it is already sinking. Stresemann understands what many politicians refuse to accept. Before you fix politics, you fix the money. Before you fix the streets, you stabilize the unit of reality people use to exchange life. He thinks of one man, the arrogant magician of finance, Schacht. There is a problem. The Reichsbank president cannot be easily removed. He is protected by law. Stresemann begs him to resign, to step aside for the sake of the nation. The man refuses, clinging to his chair while the country burns around him. So Stresemann does something desperate and crafty. He invents a title, a new position that sounds official enough to carry authority: currency commissioner. It is essentially an emergency lever. He offers it to Schacht. He cannot make Schacht central bank president yet, but he can place him where he can act. Fix the money. Schacht accepts. He walks into the Ministry of Finance and finds his headquarters for national salvation is almost insulting. A tiny room, almost a closet, a desk, a telephone, one secretary. That is it. The entire German economy is collapsing outside, and the rescue mission is being launched from a broom closet. It is absurd, and it is also strangely symbolic. In moments of collapse, real power is often concentrated in small rooms, held by a few people who understand that paper is sometimes stronger than steel. Schacht sits down and confronts the truth. The old mark is dead. He needs a new currency. He creates the Rentenmark. But the problem is faith. Money is belief. In normal systems, that belief is anchored to gold or reserves. Germany has no gold. The vaults are empty. War and reparations have drained them. So how do you persuade people to trust paper again when you have nothing to back it? This is where Schacht reveals what he truly is. Not merely a banker, but a psychological engineer. He performs national hypnosis. He announces that the Rentenmark is backed not by gold, but by the land itself, by German soil, by farms and factories, by the productive body of the nation. It is, strictly speaking, an economic fiction. You cannot redeem a note for a clump of earth. You cannot demand a brick from a factory wall. But that is not the point. The point is that the story is believable enough to stop the stampede. It is a narrative that turns paper into identity. It tells Germans, this money is real because you are real, because your land is real, because your work is real. And something remarkable happens. The panic slows. The velocity of money drops. Shops can price goods again. Bread has a stable number. The fever breaks. It is one of the great demonstrations of what central banking truly is when stripped of jargon. It is the management of belief. Schacht does not conjure gold. He conjures confidence. He does not rebuild factories overnight. He rebuilds the invisible trust that allows factories to function. Germany calls him the magician. Schacht absorbs the praise like oxygen. And here is the danger. Once you have tasted the power to stabilize reality with words and paper, you begin to believe you can steer anything. Even chaos. Even politics. Even men like Hitler. Schacht's rise to the center of German power arrives with the kind of cruel timing history loves. The old Reichsbank president, the man who refused to resign, watches Schacht stabilize what he had helped destroy. The humiliation is too heavy. In November 1923, he dies of a heart attack. Suddenly the throne is empty. On December 20th, 1923, Schacht is appointed president of the Reichsbank. The magician moves from a closet to the control room. For the next years, Schacht becomes the financial emperor of Germany. He travels to London, New York, Paris. He charms Montague Norman at the Bank of England. He cultivates Wall Street. He speaks impeccable English. He makes Germany sound like a safe bet again. And the world, eager to believe that the nightmare of post-war instability can be tamed, begins to lend. Loans return. Credit returns. Germany rises from the ashes and Schacht is the man holding the reins. But beneath the applause there is a hidden fragility. Germany's recovery in the mid-1920s is not purely a natural rebound. It is heavily dependent on foreign credit, especially American money. The system is like a body kept upright by transfusions. It looks alive, it is alive, for a time. But the dependency is dangerous. When you build stability on borrowed money, you build it on confidence. And confidence can evaporate faster than steel can rust. Schacht wants more than stabilization. He wants vindication. That humiliation of 1919 never left him. Reparations are not just payments. They are an insult made mathematical. So he goes for a major victory, renegotiating Germany's reparations through what becomes the Young Plan. He fights hard. He reduces the burden. He stretches payments out. On paper, it is a triumph. He expects gratitude. He expects a parade. Instead, he walks into a political buzzsaw. Germany's mood is souring. Far-right movements rise. They scream that any payment is treason. They demand refusal. They demand revenge. And suddenly Schacht, the magician, is reframed as a collaborator, a man who shook hands with the enemy. Newspapers tear into him. Crowds turn. The room that applauded him begins sharpening knives. Then the global storm arrives. 1929, the American crash. The Great Depression rolls across the world like a black wave. Credit tightens. American loans that propped up Germany dry up. Unemployment rises again. The Weimar Republic begins wobbling. The building Schacht helped restore starts cracking because its foundations were never fully repaired. They were merely supported. Schacht's ego cannot tolerate becoming the villain in the story he believes he authored. In 1930, he resigns, dramatic and calculated. If you do not appreciate me, he thinks, drown without me. He leaves the Reichsbank and travels, almost as a performance, expecting Germany to beg for his return. And it is on a transatlantic voyage, sitting in comfort while Europe freezes, that the next chapter begins. Schacht opens a book, a rambling manifesto by a failed artist. Mein Kampf. He reads it like a banker reads a prospectus. Not for beauty, not for morality, but for potential. He does not like everything. He finds the racial theories crude. But he sees energy. He sees a national will that can be harnessed. He sees a movement with momentum. This is the fatal weakness of certain intelligent men. They believe force can be steered. They believe the wild animal can be ridden. Schacht tells himself Hitler is a brute, but brutes can be controlled. Hitler is a force, and forces can be directed. He convinces himself that his sophistication can tame Hitler's fire. Or perhaps he convinces himself because he wants the stage again. He is wealthy, bored, addicted to influence. He needs relevance the way others need air. And the Nazi Party is rising like a storm. They are chaotic. They are violent. They are unbankable, but they are also hungry for legitimacy. They need a stamp from the establishment to be seen as more than street thugs. Schacht is that stamp. Before the famous dinner, there is courtship. Schacht meets Gring first. Gring is flash and greed, already living like a man who expects to loot the future. Schacht is cult discipline. They sense an alliance. Gring can offer proximity to power. Schacht can offer access to money and elite networks. Then comes Hitler. Hitler plays the role perfectly. He knows who Schacht is. He knows he needs him. Hitler is controlled, almost humble. He listens. He speaks of restoring German honor, creating work, defeating communism. He nods while Schacht talks economics, even if he does not fully understand. Understanding is not required. Belief is, Schacht leaves convinced. He tells his circle, this man is reasonable. It is the most catastrophic sentence of his life. Because it reveals the illusion that collapses democracies. That extremists become moderate when they approach power. In reality, they become more efficient. Schacht gets to work. He does not wear a uniform. He does not march. He opens his Rolodex. He organizes meetings with the titans of German industry, steel, coal, chemicals. He gathers them in boardrooms and offers a choice framed as survival. It is either Hitler or communism. If communists win, your factories are seized. If Hitler wins, he buys your steel. Fear becomes funding. Money begins to flow into Nazi coffers, laundered through Schacht's respectability. The Nazis surge electorally. They become the largest force in German politics. But there is one obstacle. President Paul von Hindenburg, the old war hero, despises Hitler and refuses to appoint him chancellor. Schacht steps in again, the man behind the curtain. He organizes a letter, a petition, signed by powerful businessmen urging Hindenburg to appoint Hitler for stability. Schacht signs prominently. The establishment hands the keys to the radical because it believes it can control him. The German economy surges. Unemployment collapses. Production roars. The Autobahn becomes a cinematic symbol of revival. The world, still traumatized by the Depression, looks at Germany and sees what it wants to see. A miracle, a nation that solved unemployment. They do not see the debt pressure building underneath. They do not see that the boom is being powered by militarized demand and hidden liabilities. They see the surface and mistake it for health. Schacht also knows that paper alone cannot buy everything. Germany needs raw materials it cannot conjure. Rubber, oil, copper, certain metals. You cannot print rubber. So Germany must acquire foreign exchange, dollars and pounds, to import what it needs. That requires exports, trade deals, and foreign capital. And here the story becomes morally darker, because foreign businesses and financiers, hungry in a depressed world, are tempted by Germany's apparent stability. They see contracts, they see order, they see profit. In capitalism, money often has a short memory. If the numbers look good, the past becomes negotiable. If a regime looks stable, ethics become paperwork. Schacht becomes not just Germany's banker but Germany's salesman. He sells the image of recovery. He sells confidence. He sells the idea that the new Germany is a disciplined, rational actor. It is one of the great manipulations of the era. The world wanting so badly to believe that chaos can be contained, that it accepts the appearance of order as proof of safety. By 1936, Schacht is at his zenith. He has defeated the inflation ghost of 1923. He has built a recovery, image strong enough to intoxicate both Germans and foreigners. He has funded rearmament while keeping the official budget less obviously threatening. He walks through Berlin like a man who believes he is not merely serving history but directing it, but economies have physics. And unlike the ideologues around him, Schacht can read the warning lights. The MEFO bills are deferred debt, but deferred does not mean erased. They come due, the hidden liabilities accumulate. Imports strain foreign exchange. The boom begins to overheat. It is like a boiler with pressure rise in. If you do not release it, it bursts. Schacht goes to Hitler and says the word Hitler does not want to hear: stop, slow down, normalize, reduce rearmament, strengthen exports, rebuild reserves. If you keep issuing shadow money, inflation will return. The currency will weaken. The system will crack. Hitler's eyes turn cold, because Hitler does not worship stability. He worships momentum. He does not want normal economics. He wants expansion, conquest, speed. Schacht is talking about brakes while Hitler is dreaming about acceleration. This is the moment their alliance begins to fracture, not because of personal insult, but because of incompatible worldviews. Schacht believes in the stubbornness of arithmetic. Hitler believes reality can be commanded. Hitler decides he needs an economic manager who will never say no. He chooses Hermann Göring. It is like replacing a precision engineer with a pirate because the captain no longer wants navigation, he wants plunder. Göring is theatrical, corrupt, addicted, and economically illiterate. But he has a qualification that matters more now than competence: obedience to Hitler's will. Late 1936, the 4-year plan is launched. Germany will become ready for total war within 4 years. Autarky, self-sufficiency becomes the dream. Synthetic fuel, synthetic rubber, heavy state control, imports restricted. Massive spending regardless of efficiency. Göring is placed in charge. Schacht is sidelined. Schacht cannot keep quiet. He shouts in meetings. He insults Göring openly. He writes memos criticizing corruption, waste, stupidity. The tension becomes a war inside the regime, the banker warning of economic limits, the warlord insisting limits are weakness. There is a moment often repeated because it captures the essence. Göring declares that if the Führer wishes it, then 2 times 2 is 5. Schacht, adjusting his glasses, replies that even for the Führer, mathematics remains stubborn. The room laughs nervously, because everyone understands the subtext. One man is defending reality. The other is defending power. In authoritarian systems, reality is tolerated only as long as it serves the leader's momentum. Schacht believed his brilliance made him indispensable. He believed Hitler could not afford to lose him. But Hitler already got what he needed. The engine started, the army built, the industrial base awakened. Schacht was the booster rocket. Once the rocket has placed the regime into orbit, the rocket is discarded. In November 1937, Schacht is forced to resign as economics minister. He remains at the Reichsbank a little longer, increasingly a figurehead, watching the train accelerate toward the cliff. Then 1939 arrives, and the mask drops. Hitler demands direct financing for war. He demands money creation to fund invasion plans. Schacht refuses. He drafts a memo with the other directors warning bluntly that this is the path to ruin. He will not do it. Hitler reads it and dismisses him calmly. On January 19, 1939, Schacht is removed from the Reichsbank. No screaming, no theatrical purge. Just a cold administrative verdict. You do not fit the National Socialist picture. 8 months later, Germany invades Poland. The war begins. And here is the deepest irony of Schacht's life. His tragedy is not that he failed, it is that he succeeded. He built the financial architecture that allowed Hitler to rearm in secret and move faster than the world expected. He gave the monster teeth. He tried to apply brakes at the end, but the machine was already in motion. As the war turns against Germany, Schacht becomes a ghost within the system he helped empower. He is arrested after the failed assassination attempt on Hitler in 1944. And then history delivers a dark paradox. Schacht ends up as a prisoner, moved through the regime's own machinery of cruelty, marching alongside people the system is trying to exterminate. It is as if the accountant is forced to walk inside the factory he once financed. It does not absolve him. It does not equalize suffering. But it does reveal something about the way power eats its own architects, when paranoia replaces gratitude. In 1945, the smoke clears and the victors stage the Nuremberg trials. Göring is there. Ribbentrop is there. And Schacht sits among the accused, insisting he was only a banker, insisting he tried to restrain the madness, insisting he fought from within. The court acquits him. He walks free. But history does not acquit him. Because without Schacht, Hitler might have remained a loud voice trapped by economic gravity. Without Schacht, rearmament might have been slower, more visible, more stoppable. Schacht provided legitimacy to extremism. He provided funds to mania. He provided the illusion of competence to a movement built on violence. And this is where the story becomes bigger than one man, bigger than Germany, Bigger than that dinner table in 1931. Because Schacht's story is a warning about the quiet figures behind loud dictators. We fixate on speeches, uniforms, flags, and crowds. We focus on the theater of power. But the real machinery of modern tyranny often runs through paperwork, ledgers, credit lines, and institutions that sound boring enough to trust. Dictators scream about blood and soil, but it is the banker who buys the shovel. The banker who makes the trains run. The banker who finds ways to pay factories, hide deficits, and postpone consequences long enough for the regime to lock itself in place. Schacht is also a warning about intelligence without humility. He believed he could steer the tiger. He believed he could use the Nazis as a vehicle and step off before the cliff. That belief is one of the most dangerous lies educated elites tell themselves, especially in moments of national panic. They think they can control extremists. They think their sophistication is a leash. Often it is not. Often their sophistication becomes the tool extremists use to become efficient. There is a modern echo here that feels unsettling because it is structural, not ideological. Schacht's MEFO Bills are not merely a historical curiosity. They are a prototype of the broader human habit of hiding risk behind complexity. The world has seen many versions since: off-balance sheet vehicles, shadow banking, financial engineering designed to make danger look like stability, systems where the surface appears calm while liabilities accumulate underneath. The details differ, but the temptation is the same. If you can postpone the bill, you can enjoy the benefits now. If you can hide the cost, you can sell the miracle. Schacht's Germany looked like a miracle because it solved unemployment, rebuilt industry, restored pride. But the miracle was financed by hidden debt, militarized demand, and a political project that required enemies. The recovery was not simply economic, it was ideological. It demanded scapegoats, it demanded repression, it demanded expansion. Once the regime committed to that path, it could not slow down without collapsing, because the internal system was designed around momentum. That is another rule of such systems. They become addicted to acceleration. When they stop moving forward, the contradictions catch them. So they keep moving forward, even if forward leads to war. In the end, Schacht's genius is not a clean story of brilliance. It is a story of brilliance used to disguise a crime. A story of a man who could stabilize a currency and also invent a shadow currency to fund tanks. A story of how expertise can become a weapon when it divorces itself from morality. Schacht wanted Germany respected. He wanted revenge for humiliation. He wanted to be the man at the levers. He got what he wanted in the short term. And in doing so, he helped build a machine that crushed Europe. So if you want the true meaning of that dinner in 1931, it is not romance, not friendship, not even pure ideology. It is the meeting of fire and ice, chaos and calculation, the street demagogue and the financial engineer. It is the moment when rage meets a ledger, and the ledger says yes. It is the moment when a nation's trauma is translated into a budget, into credit, into production schedules, into weapons. And once that translation is complete, the rest is only speed. When you look back at the 20th century, do not only look at the men on balconies. Look behind them. Look for the quiet man in the stiff collar who can make numbers obey, who can sell confidence, who can hide a bomb inside paperwork. Because the dictator may announce the dream, but it is the banker who funds the nightmare.